Everybody, it's Andrew Hoty, and I want to welcome you to the first edition of Short Takes with Andrew Hoty, where I just give a brief synopsis on the latest sports news going into the weekend. So, Donovan Mitchell just getting a game-winning shot against the Milwaukee Bucks in Milwaukee for the Cleveland Cavaliers as they are now 7-0 on the season. I am very impressed from what I've seen from the Cavs so far to open the year. Obviously, this is just a 7-game sample size of 82 games. They're obviously going to lose at some point during this regular season, but heck, if the season were to continue the way it's going, the Cavs are on their way to about a 60-plus win season, and they're going to be a great regular season basketball team. I've obviously expressed a lot of my concerns on Raw Takes about this team going into the postseason later this year, but Donovan Mitchell getting the game-winning shot today, I still think this team is probably going to be roughly around the 55-win marker if this keeps up. But they have just been firing on all cylinders. And Donovan Mitchell as a superstar has been incredibly special. He's a great leader, and we've seen it. And offensively so far, the Cavs have different leading scorers every night so far. Dean Wade is making a case to possibly replace Max Strus as the fifth starter in the rotation because he's been playing phenomenal, Dean Wade, in the first 7 games of the year. You look at Darius Garland, how he's come back to life a little bit after a rough season last year. Jared Allen still getting all those boards. Evan Mobley has been making some big strides as well. And Kenny Atkinson, the credit goes to him. He's been a terrific head coach addition for the Cavs so far. And JB Bickerstaff, as great as he was defensively, obviously the ceiling was reached with him, but the core four is getting the job done. And as we're saying here in Cleveland, for the land, the Cavs are absolutely showing that so far. Donovan Mitchell bringing us to another tremendous win. And the NBA so far is off to a really solid start when you look at a lot of the other teams out there. Oklahoma City has obviously gotten off to a hot start. Milwaukee's been struggling a little bit. The Bucks, I think, will figure things out later in the season, but I think Doc Rivers is clearly on the hot seat, and there's going to be some significant problems with the Bucks because of that. And hopefully they figure things out in Milwaukee, because I actually love Giannis Antetokounmpo as a player, but it's going to be a tough road for the Bucks to open the year. You look at the Boston Celtics, obviously they're not going anywhere. They did lose to Indiana at one point, but the New York Knicks are really good too. The Miami Heat, you can never sleep on them. Orlando did lose Paolo Banchero. As you saw, the Cavs were able to get a win off the Magic on Friday night. So the NBA is obviously more competitive than it's ever been before, and obviously you don't want to forget about the West, teams like Denver and Dallas and all that, but great win for the Cavs. They're 7-0, undefeated on the season, and a great start to the year for them. And now Ohio State getting a big win today over Penn State, 20-13. Ohio State essentially gave them 10 of those points in my view. And Ohio State took care of business other than that. When you look at Ibuka and his big touchdown play from Will Howard earlier in the game, that really just had a quick response for the Buckeyes right after Penn State took a 10-0 lead. Ohio State clearly the better player, playing talent-wise, I should say. They are definitely the better talented team over Penn State. They showed it today in the final score. What a special game for the Buckeyes. But obviously, I still think there are some issues with Ryan Day as the head coach. They got a lot of adjustments to make. But defensively, a lot better today. They shut down Penn State completely. Essentially, those 7 points were just given to them. It should have been a 20-6 ball game. And those 3 points were also given to them too later on in the game, but it essentially should have been a 20-6 ball game when you really look at the nitty-gritty football aspects of that game. But man, Ohio State getting a really, really important win, especially for their Big Ten championship game hopes, and hopefully a big run in the 12-team playoff format later in the year. But what will that mean for Ryan Day in the future? We still have yet to see, and they haven't played Michigan yet. Even though Michigan's not ranked right now, that is still going to be the tell-all game in my view. And Indiana is really tough this year too. When you look at the Hoosiers and the season they've had, that's going to be a tough opponent, I should say, for the Ohio State Buckeyes. All right. And the NFL tomorrow, the Cleveland Browns taking on the Los Angeles Chargers for the first time ever. The Browns have an opportunity to possibly beat head coaching brothers in back-to-back games. When you look at John Harbaugh last week with the Baltimore Ravens, and of course, Jim Harbaugh this week. And, you know, the Harbaugh brothers obviously are Ohio guys, but they've essentially dominated Ohio sports the last couple of years. Obviously, the Baltimore Ravens and their history against the Cleveland Browns, a big-time struggle for us in Ohio with facing John Harbaugh twice a year for the last 10 to 15 years since he's been the head coach in Baltimore, of course. But overall, we've had some success with the Ravens in our last 2 games against them. And of course, if you look at Jim Harbaugh and what he did to Ohio State the last few years, but he struggled with Ohio State earlier on. Nevertheless, the Harbaugh brothers have actually spelled a lot of trouble for Ohio, so I think that would be great history if the Browns are able to find a way to win tomorrow. I think they could. The Chargers are very streaky. They're not necessarily a great team, but they do have a great quarterback with Justin Herbert, and I really like what I'm seeing from their offensive line right now when you look at a guy like Joe Alt, for example, who has been pretty tremendous for them in protecting Justin Herbert. But still, the Browns' defense is pretty good. Jameis Winston had a 300-plus yards game last week. I think the Browns will be just fine. I think this is going to be one of those games where we start to see momentum shift about the Browns a little bit for the trade deadline. I still think the season is over, but heck, there is a lot to be kind of excited about right now if you're the Browns, at least in terms of rattling off maybe a few wins here and putting yourselves back in the conversation to possibly have a good stretch to end the season going into 2025. But with the energy here in Cleveland right now, with the Cavs doing as well as they did, the Guardians may be out of it, but heck, they had a great run as well. The Browns could try to feed off some of that a little bit. Obviously, no Deshaun Watson, which was honestly creating a lot of friction in the fan base anyway because he was playing so poorly. Jameis Winston's now under center. There's no pressure in terms of the quarterback position. Jameis Winston's just looking to put some film on tape. Kevin Stefanski looking to get another win. So I'm excited to see what the Browns are able to do. I'm going to be at the game tomorrow too, so I'm really excited to see how the Browns handle things live down at Huntington Bank Field. So, big weekend, of course, in the NFL, too. You look at the Jets, they defeated the Texans. I predicted that the Texans would win easily. I was clearly wrong on that. The Jets have kind of got themselves back in the conversation because they're now second in the AFC East. Who knows what that's going to mean for them down the line. However, when you look at teams like Cincinnati, Baltimore, Pittsburgh is now the second seed in the AFC. Do we really believe Pittsburgh's going to have this outstanding run when they haven't even played a divisional game yet? And we know how they've struggled with the Browns recently. We know how they struggle with the Cincinnati Bengals at times with Joe Burrow. They've actually dominated the Ravens. So the Steelers have played pretty well in divisional games, but they haven't played them yet. And we know how tricky divisional games could be. And you look around the NFL right now at some of the other teams. I mean, the Detroit Lions, I was actually surprised to see this. They have the toughest schedule down the rest of the year. I think they're going to lose to Green Bay tomorrow, but I think they'll beat Green Bay in Detroit when they play them later this year, and the Detroit Lions will figure things out down the line, but Green Bay may have a good moment tomorrow. But the Detroit Lions right now look like the best team in the NFC if you look at that conference as a whole. Arizona has a legitimate shot to win the NFC West. That is something I'm really fascinated by as well. But the NFC is definitely in a little bit of a different bracket situation than the AFC, where we see so many bad teams around the league. Someone most likely that is a bad team right now is going to make the playoffs. So I'm excited to see what takes place there with the NFL as a whole. But my Cleveland Browns taking on the Los Angeles Chargers tomorrow, and I think that is going to be one heck of a game. And I would say the Browns are going to win that game. I wasn't so high about it earlier this week, but I think the Browns are going to get to 3-6 and start to slowly figure little things out about this team going forward in the season. They still have a lot of divisional games yet to be played too. They still have to play Pittsburgh twice. They have Baltimore at the end of the season. Who knows if Baltimore will be playing for anything then, because Baltimore's had such a good start to the year offensively, especially. It was just kind of a blip in the schedule and a trap game for them facing the Browns. And of course, you look at Cincinnati one more time in Cincinnati. So a lot of divisional games to be played for the Browns too. A lot of their losses, what actually does help the Browns too, a lot of their losses were NFC opponents. They still have to play New Orleans, their only NFC team left that they have to face on the schedule, who have been a shell of themselves since Derek Carr got hurt. So there's a lot going on in the NFL, a lot of bad teams. One of those teams likely is going to rise from the ashes and possibly make a playoff rise. I think the Rams may be one of those teams because they started off pretty slow, but we'll have to see what takes place. That's it for this week's edition of Short Takes with Andrew Hoty. We'll have another edition next Saturday as we continue the Raw Takes legacy here. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this video, as well as checking me out on social media. You know where you can find me, Hoty Raw Takes on Instagram. You can look at me on Twitter and X at Hoty Andrew, or on Facebook, Raw Takes with Andrew Hoty. Have a good one, everybody. This was my Short Takes.